Hi everyone, my name is Monique, and today I'm going to be showing you how to play a game called Ironwood, designed by Maël, Brunet, and Julien Chaput, illustrated by Christina Kalida and Vilo Farkas, and published by Mindclash Games, who are helping sponsor this video. In Ironwood, 1 to 2 players compete as two opposing factions, the strong and industrious Ironclad and the swift and agile Woodwakers, each seeking to harness the power of the Larimore crystals to achieve their own unique victory conditions and exert dominance over Ironwood. This is an asymmetric card-driven game that takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play and will also come with a solo mode. But today, I'll be showing you how to play the 2-player game. But for more information regarding the game, I've included a link to the publisher's website in the description below. Otherwise, let's start with setup. To set up the game, place the main game board in the center of the table with the 2-player side face up. Players may choose or randomly determine which faction to play, and take the faction's player board with the 2-player side face up. Next, take your faction's 3 base cards, each marked by a star, into your hand. Then, shuffle your deck of special cards and place it face down next to your player board. As a chieftain of the Woodwakers, shuffle the 4 vision cards showing an inner mountain and randomly draw 1, keeping it secret. Then, shuffle the remaining 3 vision cards showing an inner mountain with the rest of the vision card deck and place the deck face down on your player board. Place 2 Woodwalker fighters on each outer forest space on the board and place the remaining fighters along with the 5 totems next to your player board. And as the commander of the Ironclad, place the drill and 1 Ironclad fighter on Ferrum, as well as 3 Ironclad fighters on each of the inner mountains connected to Ferrum. Then, place a marker on the start space of the drill track, the forge tokens on your player board, and the remaining fighters and golems nearby. And finally, place all markers and crystals in a common supply within reach of both players, and now you're ready to play. In Ironwood, players alternate taking turns playing 1 card each from their hands. After the first player resolves their card, then play proceeds to the next player, who then plays a card from their hand. And play continues this way until each player has played a total of 3 cards. And players will use these cards to move around the board and engage in combat, with the goal of being the first to achieve their victory condition. The board features 2 types of terrain. There are forests and there are mountains. The Woodwalkers are found only in the forests, moving along small paths that connect them. Meanwhile, the Ironclad are located solely in the mountains, traveling along adjacent ridges. And as you can see, these routes are connected via tunnels that travel under the mountain. So throughout the game, neither faction can ever enter the other's terrain. As a commander of the Ironclad, your ultimate goal is to build 3 forges along the outer mountains, by first laying foundations, and then using the crystals acquired by your drill to upgrade them into powerful forges. And as a chieftain of the Woodwalkers, your goal is to secure 3 ancient totems, by first discovering them with your vision cards, and then transporting them to the outer forest regions to summon the guardian of the forest. And both factions will need to leverage the power of the Larimore crystals in order to achieve their objectives and enhance their strategies throughout the game. Now, the game is played over the course of several rounds, and each round consists of 3 phases, starting with the preparation phase. During this phase, both players gain crystals from the supply, with the chieftain of the Woodwalkers receiving 1 crystal and the Ironclad gaining 2 crystals. Larimore crystals are powerful resources that are used in several different ways, including when recruiting fighters and building forges as the Ironclad. Each player also draws 2 cards from their special deck. However, during the first round, players may draw 4 cards, keeping 2 and shuffling the rest back into their deck. Then, players move into the actions phase, which is resolved in turn order. While some steps during the round can be played simultaneously, whenever players must act in turn order, especially during the actions phase, it's important to remember that the Woodwalker player always goes first. During the actions phase, starting with the Woodwalkers, players alternate playing and resolving an action card from their hand, placing it in the leftmost available space on their player board. And each player will play a total of 3 cards per round. Both factions have a unique deck of 38 cards, including 3 base cards marked by a star, which contain the faction's primary actions for reaching their objectives. While most cards are permanently discarded after use, base cards are always returned back to your hand at the end of each round. Now, player cards look like this. Each card contains a combination of actions, represented by keywords and symbols, that can be resolved when played. All actions are optional, but they must be resolved in the order listed from top to bottom. However, cards with the spend or burn keywords, which require you to spend crystals or discard cards, must be fully resolved to gain the indicated benefit. Some special cards have ongoing effects and are not discarded immediately. When played as an action, place the indicated number of markers on the card. Any ongoing benefits remain active as long as the card still contains markers. Before moving into the actions phase of each round, players must remove one marker from each of their ongoing cards. Doing so may trigger an effect, and once the final marker is removed, the card is discarded. Alternatively, cards can be wagered in combat, using the combat values displayed in the top corner banner. But keep in mind that cards wagered in combat cannot be used for their action effects and vice versa. If a card effect allows you to play an additional card in the same turn, finish resolving the first card before playing the second, and stack both cards in the same slot on your player board, ensuring the titles of each card remain visible. Now on your turn, if you have no cards in your hand, or if you choose not to play a card, you may instead draw one card from your deck, placing a marker on your player board to indicate this. While many actions on players' cards are unique to their faction, some actions, such as movement and combat, are common to both. When moving around the board, Woodwalker units move individually as fighters, as represented by this symbol. When resolving the move action, you'll choose the indicated number of individual fighters and move them to an adjacent space. As for Ironclad combat units, they move only in warbands, as represented by this symbol. A warband consists of one or more combat units from either faction that occupy the same location. When moving a warband, choose one or more combat units in that location and move them to a single adjacent space. When doing so, you may leave some units behind. However, those units must remain in their original location and cannot move during the same action. And it's important to keep in mind that each faction unit can only be moved once per turn, unless a card allows for additional movement. And if a card instructs you to move two warbands, they must each come from different locations. As for combat, faction warbands can engage in battle with adjacent enemy warbands by playing cards with the keyword attack. But it's important to note that combat can never include warbands in outer forest locations, which means Woodwalker warbands in outer forests cannot be attacked, nor can they attack the Ironclad. When resolving an attack, you must first choose one of your warbands that's adjacent to an enemy warband. And in this game, in order to be adjacent, their locations must be in contact. Your warband becomes the attacker, while the opponent's warband is the defender. Then, starting with the attacker and followed by the defender, each player may optionally wager one card from their hand by placing it face down in front of them. And once both players have decided whether to wager a card, they reveal them simultaneously and determine the outcome by comparing the combat values of each card. Although, if a player chooses not to wager a card, resolve combat as if their combat values were 0. Each faction's damage is equal to the combat value of the card they played, plus any additional bonuses from played cards and special combat units. The Ironclad player has 3 special combat units called golems that can only be recruited with special card effects. Each golem in battle contributes an additional damage, and if there's a forge at the location, including the one present on Ferrum, it also adds 1 additional damage as long as there are combat units in the same location. Then, each player subtracts their opponent's defense value from their total damage to determine how many of their opponent's units are removed. Had the Woodwalker player chosen to gain 1 defense from their ongoing card, then the Ironclad player would deal 3 total damage, 2 from their wagered card after subtracting the 1 defense, plus 1 damage for their golem in combat. And for each remaining point of damage, remove 1 enemy fighter. Damage can be dealt simultaneously, and the player dealing the damage always gets to decide how it's distributed. Golems, however, are stronger than a typical Ironclad fighter, and in order to remove a golem, you must deal 2 damage in a single combat. Otherwise, damage cannot be dealt to totems, foundations, forges, or the drill. And once all damage has been dealt, you'll then determine the winner of the battle. If both factions still have units remaining, they each calculate their total dominance by adding the dominance value of their wagered card plus 1 dominance for each combat unit remaining in battle. The faction with the higher dominance wins the combat, but in the case of a tie, the attacker wins. Now, if only one faction's units remain, they automatically win. But if no units remain, neither faction wins the battle. And once the winner is determined, the battle ends and both players discard their wagered card. However, if a base card was wagered, it should be placed next to their discard pile to pick up at the end of the round. The winning player then has the option to force the losing warband to retreat to an adjacent location. And warbands cannot be split when forced to retreat. But if a Woodwalker warband carrying a totem is forced to retreat, it must leave the totem behind. As you can see, it is crucial for the Ironclad faction to engage in combat with Woodwalker fighters that are carrying totems, in order to hinder them from reaching the outer forest locations. As for the Woodwalker faction, you'll want to target locations containing the Ironclad's drill, so that you can steal their valuable crystals. If a Woodwalker warband wins a battle in a location where the Ironclad's drill is present, the drill is destroyed and returned to Ferrum. In addition, whenever the drill is destroyed, the Woodwalker player may take one crystal from the cargo area of the Ironclad player's board, returning the rest to the supply. The Woodwalker player may even initiate a battle in a location with the drill using any card's attack effect, even when no combat units are present. In this case, the Woodwalkers automatically win, destroying the drill. In addition, certain cards allow the Woodwalker player to specifically attack Ferrum, earning them crystals if victorious. So it is important for the Ironclad player to protect both the drill and Ferrum. In addition to movement and combat, each faction has its own unique actions that are crucial for achieving their asymmetric victory conditions. As a chieftain of the Woodwalkers, in order to secure a totem, you must first discover one by using your vision cards to locate them on the board. The vision deck consists of 10 vision cards, each representing a mountain space on the board except for Ferrum. The Woodwalker player starts the game with one vision card in their hand, but certain card effects will allow them to draw more. To discover a totem, you must first choose a vision card from your hand and have at least one warband in an adjacent inner forest region. The mountain location on the vision card must also not be controlled by the Ironclad, which means no combat units may be present there. However, if the location contains only a foundation, forge, and/or the drill, it is still considered uncontrolled. Then, discard the vision card face up and add a totem token with the full side face up to the warband that discovered it. If the totem was discovered on an inner mountain, you also gain 3 crystals from the supply, as indicated by the vision card. And each played vision card must remain face up and visible to the Ironclad player, so that they know which cards are left in the deck. Now, once a totem has been discovered, it must be moved to an outer forest region in order to secure it before it eventually fades. Each Woodwalker fighter can carry up to 1 totem when moving. And unlike fighters, totems can be moved multiple times in one action by passing them from one fighter to another. However, if a warband carrying a totem is ever forced to retreat after losing in battle, or if they are ever destroyed, they must leave the totem behind. But as soon as a fighter enters a location, they can immediately pick up the totem. Each round that a totem is left on the board unsecured causes the totem's power to fade. At the end of each round, the Woodwalker player will flip over all of the totems on the board to their fading side. And if a totem is already on its fading side, then it'll instead get removed from the board. But as soon as a totem is brought to an outer forest location, it is immediately secured and removed from the board. Secured totems are kept on your player board and can never be taken from you. And once you secure the 3rd totem, you immediately win. As a commander of the Ironclad, you'll need to build 3 forges in outer mountain locations. In order to build a forge, you must first establish foundations on the outer mountains and use crystals collected by your drill to upgrade them. To lay a foundation, you must first control an outer mountain location, and in this game, a player controls the location if they have at least 1 combat unit present. You can then play the base card called Expansion, and place a foundation token on that mountain as long as it doesn't already have a foundation or a forge. And keep in mind that foundations cannot be placed on inner mountain locations or on Ferrum, which already has a forge. Once you've laid a foundation, you'll need at least 5 crystals in order to upgrade it, and collecting these crystals is the primary function of the drill. Certain special cards will allow you to move the drill to an adjacent mountain space. When you move the drill to a mountain that has no forge on it, advance 1 space on the drill track and gain the rewards of the new space. The first space gains you 2 crystals. The second space gains you 1 crystal. It also allows you to secretly look at the top of the Woodwalker player's vision deck, returning the card back to the top, and recruit 1 fighter to the mountain where the drill came from. And the third space allows you to gain 1 crystal and draw 1 special card. Any crystals collected are placed in the cargo area of your board and may not be spent until they are unloaded by moving the drill to a location with a forge. Once the tracker reaches the rightmost space, you'll collect its bonus again with each subsequent movement of the drill. As soon as the drill is moved to a location containing a forge, you must unload the crystals. Reset the drill track to its starting position and transfer all of the crystals from the cargo area to your available supply. And keep in mind that you don't have to move the drill to a different forge in order to unload it. But if a forge is built at the mountain where the drill is, it is immediately unloaded. In order to build a forge, you must first control an outer mountain location where you've built a foundation, and have at least 5 crystals. Then, you can play a card with the keyword build, such as with the base card called reinforcement. You would then spend 5 crystals from the available crystals area on your player board, and flip the foundation token over to its forge side. Each forge built provides the Ironclad player with greater flexibility in unloading your drill, as well as recruiting new fighters, as you'll see later. And as soon as you've built your third forge, not including Ferrum, then you win the game. Once both players have played 3 cards each, then they move into the end of round phase. During this phase, you'll discard all special cards played and return any played base cards to your hand. If you have more than 8 cards in hand, including base cards, but excluding vision cards, discard special cards until you have at most 8. And any ongoing cards containing markers are moved above your player board. Afterwards, each totem still on the map will fade. Flip each totem to its fading side, and if it is already on its fading side, instead remove it from the board. And lastly, in turn order, players may recruit 1 or more fighters by spending 2 crystals per fighter. Recruited Woodwalker fighters are placed in any outer forest, while Ironclad fighters are recruited to any locations with a forge. Then, players start a new round in the preparation phase, and as soon as a player reaches their victory condition, they win. And that's how you play Ironwood. Now for all of you solo gamers, the game also comes with 2 unique solo modes where you can either go up against the Iron bot or the Wooden bot, as well as multiple levels of difficulty. For rules regarding both solo modes, be sure to turn to page 22 and 28 in your rulebook. Otherwise, if you have any questions about anything that you saw here, please feel free to leave me a comment down below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I really hope it was helpful. If you enjoy content like this and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Bye.